Didn't hear that up here.
Maybe do something like I need new dishes. So maybe new dishes. Because like you have to like fight against this like thing that you hate. And some saints say that in order to like sometimes like do something that someone that you don't necessarily enjoy doing. So because it helps you grow more virtue. If you're like doing an act of charity that you don't necessarily like get joy out of. That's your guidance.
It's good. It's going to lead us right into our next step.
So is the act of penance in and of itself always focused?
Is the act of penance always
Other focused.
Other focused.
Focused.
how would others answer that? Are you going to answer that question, Jane? Is the act of penance always other focused?
Well, because I could, for my penance, ask Mary to intercede for me in growing in that area of my life, or which like it always involves like a death to self, I think, but it doesn't always involve like I guess directly.
Yeah, I would kind of think of if a penance is to gain self-mastery, which is one of the dimensions of it, there is some dimension of self being certain. Gaining self-mastery, regaining ground lost in the spiritual life because of sin, there is some self in that. Obviously, the more we emulate Christ, the more we'll love our neighbor. So our neighbors will be beneficiaries of our penance because it should then help change our life. Good examples. Emily's example, and I think all of them, it leads to the fact that penance is most worthy when it leads to sacrifice. Okay, that leads to the next one. These penances, though, and you can probably take them and summarize them even to the traditional 3 acts of penance, which are fasting, prayer, and almsgiving. These are traditional acts of penance. So during the Lenten season, you'll hear often of a call to do some specific act of prayer, some specific act of fasting, and then some specific act of almsgiving. Now, the examples here, like to take care of your sister, that's an act of almsgiving, that's an act of charity. Almsgiving is charity. Down here, to abstain from salad dressing, that's an act of fast. To pray or Mass, those are acts of prayer. So traditionally, we can take all of our acts of penance and summarize them in those 3 traditional ways: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. That's not restricted just for Lent, but in Lent, we really do want to focus on that. Let me share with you just a little quick video.
Do you need my help? Yeah, there you go.
Look at that.
There you go.
All right. I kind of feel like I'm stealing, but I try to do this. See, it's preview only. This is a homily service. So I will start talking with you guys, but they got to be nice. We're going to preview only, but we're not making money on this, so we're not breaking the laws, I guess, right? I am loving penance.
We get stuck in our lives, in our relationships, and in our faith. Sometimes we simply stop living and just start observing. And I'm pretty sure that we know things. That we would get stuck in life and inside ourselves. And that we might have a hard time sometimes seeing anything else. Giving, fasting, and praying are probably the most simple yet complex disciplines that God asks of us. God asks us to give, fast, and pray to help keep our eyes focused out and up. The problem, however, is that all of these things require sacrifice. And the truth is, there is absolutely nothing natural about sacrifice. As Christians, many of us find ourselves afraid to let go, to really give, fast, or pray. We too quickly forget the character of the God that's given to us so generously, as if when we What are we so afraid of? How is it that we immediately forget to hold loosely the gifts that have been poured down over us? Is it possible we've forgotten to consider that they are gifts at all, and that pouring them out onto the world around us might leave us with more than we thought? When we give freely, we move closer to God. When we fast diligently, we move closer to God. When we pray ardently, we move closer to God. Before Paul died, he called us to live lives of reckless abandon. We can be sure that this would be hard, or he wouldn't have had to give us the reminder. So there must be something more, something deeper, something that comes from within that calls us to a life of extravagant sacrifice. Something deeper is calling us to give, fast, and pray. What would call you to a life of extravagant abandon?
But then I watched the second time and I thought, yeah, that's it. Because, as I mentioned, prayer, fasting, almsgiving, giving, it requires sacrifice. And sacrifice, as I mentioned, is the most unnatural thing to do. Sacrifice is pouring yourself out. It's giving of yourself. It's getting out of yourself and into the lives of others to serve them. If you sacrifice, you might fear that you won't have anything left. Or if you sacrifice, you might fear your life will be a dull. Brothers. But in fact, it's not that at all. Those smiles of the people on the screen, they reminded me of the Sisters of St. John, a religious community of women who live in Princeville, Illinois. One of our parishioners, a daughter of a former student here at BGSU, Michelle Russell, is a member there at that community. And it's not unique to their community. Religious sisters across the country have this. They have an incredible amount of joy. You walk into those communities, you spend any time with them, and you're overwhelmed by just their joyful disposition. They're smiling, they're laughing. But you know what? They're smiling and they're laughing because they're fasting. They're going hungry sometimes. They're tempering their appetite. They're not letting their stomach rule their choices. why they're happy? Because they're praying. Oh, their lives are busy as yours and I, but they're prioritizing in such a way that they make sure prayer is the center of their day. You know why they're happy? It's because they're extending themselves in charity, giving others. See, the practices of penance really allow us to be the people we're meant to be. It frees us, it detaches us, it focuses on others, it focuses on God. And in that's where we find joy. You know? If we think we're going to find joy in snuggling up, you know, the great big bowl of ice cream and a soft little lazy boy with our favorite blanket and our favorite movie, you know, filling all the senses, we'll have a moment of pleasure. But we will have the same sense of deep joy that maybe those people with video had, a sense of deep joy that is found in some of the religious communities, or found among those who are really living a penitential life. I don't think we will. We'll have a moment of pleasure, but not that deep joy. That deep joy is really found in that sense of sacrifice. Now, as the video proposes that I have affirmed, I don't think sacrifice is very natural to our disposition. And so, what does God do for us? In our sinful disposition, it's not natural for us to extend ourselves. It's not natural for ourselves to lay ourselves out for others. Our sinful, broken disposition. So what does God do for us? God gives to us the most perfect example, right? In the person of Jesus Christ. The second person of the Trinity comes down from heaven. God himself, worthy of all the glory of the saints and angels, strips himself of glory, comes down to earth like us in all things but sin, to show us the love of the Father. And how does he show us the love of the Father? By being focused on us, by loving us. And when he lovingly looks at us, those 2,000 years ago, and all of humanity before, and he looks at all of humanity after that moment, when he came 2,000 years ago, and he looks at us. He looks at us and loves us. And yet he, better than we, know our sin. He knows the times that we stepped our way. He knows the times we've been indifferent to him. He knows the times where we have just simply disregarded his commandment. Yeah, he knows all of that. But he still loves us. He gets out of himself so much that he's willing to pay the debt of our sin. We are reminded the debt of sin is death. So he sacrifices himself. And he himself is the final, perfect, ultimate sacrifice. And so every time we offer ourselves in sacrifice to others, we give ourselves to his sacrifice. And he teaches us that's true living. To extend ourselves in sacrifice. And so penance and sacrifice do go hand in hand. There are tremendous stories of sacrifice. I came across a story of China suffered a pretty severe earthquake in the year 2004. And in a village, the rescuers came to a house that they knew a young woman lived in. The house had collapsed completely, and they looked through the rubble and they saw the body of the young mother. And she was in a posture that was almost like she was kneeling down. And then her hands and her head were something in front of her. So she kind of a little bit of a crouched position. But yet the house collapsed